we're bringing up authenticity as kind of the theme, what does authenticity mean to me? And that's presence, right? And like,
Mm.
if you are truly present, you understand that where you are right now, what you're experiencing right now is fleeting. This moment will never happen again. And you are going to evolve over time. So I really like, I don't think that we should bind ourselves to the identity that we had even yesterday, even a few
Yeah.
hours ago. Like if you are learning, and my people are voracious learners, we love to explore and discover things, that changes you.
Mm.
Why on earth wouldn't you let your life evolve based on being changed by like a learning experience? So that's always important for me. It's especially in the name of authenticity.
What is good, y'all? It is your boy Jonathan Dumas, and this is Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood, the show where we talk to the people we see every day because we don't know what we miss until we miss them. And if you are new here, welcome to the fam. If you've been rocking with me for a minute, I appreciate you. I hope you all are staying well. Something's going on. It's that time of year where people are getting sick. Holidays are coming around, close quarters, all that stuff. Hope you're staying well. Lynn's been sick all week. It's trying to get me. Whatever it is, it's trying to get me, but I'm not allowing it to. I'm having turmeric, ginger, orange juice, oranges, lemon, all the things. So I hope y'all do the same. I can send you a cool little recipe for a immuno shot or whatever. Anyways, we are continuing our series on performing authenticity. If you missed last week's episode, I encourage you to go check it out. Last week I had an opportunity to chat with my friend, author and creative Jocelyn Chung, and we chopped it up about her newly released children's book, When Love Is More Than Words, and that's illustrated by Julia Quo. And in this poem turned children's book, she explores the many ways that loved ones can say I love you without explicitly saying I love you. And there's a lot, because I mean, sometimes I love you doesn't feel like adequate enough, and in some cultures I love you saying that explicitly not a thing. So it's a really beautiful book. It was a wonderful conversation. It was actually really interesting because I asked her, was this always intended to be a children's book? Because it started out as a poem. And she said no. And this kind of like turned into a reflection conversation about how sometimes when we have an intended plan with something or we do something in the past, so like, for example, this is her work that's turned into a children's book. It's kind of difficult sometimes. And we reflected on sometimes when you look back, how there may be some embarrassment, some shame, some guilt, some trauma maybe that you just don't want to revisit. But how if you're able to, right? If you have like an environment in the present where you have a coach, a therapist, whatever, when you're looking back on those things, it actually give you context for who you're becoming as you're becoming more, authentic, more real, more you. And there can be just like clues and different things that were present always about the things that are still true about you now. So it was a really, really good conversation. I want to encourage y'all to check it out. It was really fun. Also, go buy her book. It's a really good book. There's a link on that episode to go buy that book. Go check it out. Yo, but this week I am sitting down with none other than the amazing Candice Taylor, aka the Dream Doula. Now, if you're like me and you heard that and you're like, what is a Dream Doula? Don't trip. Don't worry. Candace is going to break that all the way down later on in our conversation. But as a little preview, a Dream Doula is somebody who helps you bring your dreams to life while staying true to who you are. And there's no compromising about it. There's no shrinking. There's no abandoning yourself. Really dope work. And in this conversation, we talk about navigating those things that really want to like kill our dreams, that like put so much pressure on us to shrink our dreams, to shrink who we are, to say that we are dreaming too big. And we talk about how to navigate those things. And she gives some really practical tools. We also talk about the power of joy as an act of rebellion and how we can redefine time and what success actually means and what success can look like for ourselves. And hint, it has to do with us and how we define success, right? And Candice even shares some real talk about being a multi-passionate when you've got all these ideas, but not enough hours in the day. And she gives some really practical tools about managing all those ideas without losing ourselves. But before we jump into this game-changing convo, let me take a quick moment to plug a few things because we got to get this housekeeping done. We are building something special here, and I want you to be a part of it. Come on now. So first off, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Yep, I am talking to you. right now. I'm looking at you directly in the camera. If you're checking us out, please hit that like, subscribe, little bell, and catch when we drop content. It really helps folks discover the show. And plus, I know if you're this far, you're tapped in, you're locked in, you want to check out what's going on. Second thing, join our email list. Why? Because that's where all the magic happens. And plus, I will be sending you some free stickers your way if you join our email list. That link is in the description and episode show notes. I got it. All right. And lastly, make sure you're following the podcast on all platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher. Actually, not on Stitcher because Stitcher doesn't exist anymore. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. You can subscribe. Please leave a review. Share it with people. Help spread the love. All right, I think those are all of the housekeeping things. I'm ready for y'all to check out this conversation with Candice. So without further ado, Candice is bringing some truth, some tools, and some inspiration to step into your dreams boldly and unapologetically. All right, let's get into it, y'all. Here's the conversation with Candice. Yes, so Candice, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really excited to have you. I've been following your work for a while. I know we chatted a while ago, but yeah, what's up? How's it going?
It's going well. It's a nice Wednesday. I'm in New York City
Mm.
and I get to take my dog on a walk every morning in Prospect Park, and the weather was perfect and he was in a good
Nice.
mood. So we had a great start to our day.
Hey, that's nice. That's really, really nice. So as you know, we are going through our Performing Authenticity series right now. Oh, I'm a pause. I always do that. I'm so ready to talk to people. I always forget to ask them to share that because I know you a little bit. But let's rewind. And I want to give you space to share a little about who you are, the work that you do, with the folks and the listeners of Highly Visible.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm always ready to dive into. I don't do like surface level conversations. I'm like, let's go to the depths of the ocean.
Yes. Yeah.
We already know each other. But
Yes.
Candace, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. I am a deeply multi-passionate person, which I think we definitely have some alignment and affinity on. And I always tell people the story of when I was applying for colleges. I got a full ride to Howard and I was like super excited about it. It was one of my dream schools. And then they hit me with you have to pursue traditional academic pursuits. You can't be a dancer. And I was like, wait, you can't make me choose. I'm not about to do.
Yeah.
So I went
That's
instead.
tough.
I went instead to pursue, my multi-passionate nature. And people were like, what are you doing? Like, why
Mm,
that choice? But I
mm,
knew, like, somewhere in my soul, even as a young person, I was 17 when I started college, like, even as a young person, I knew that sacrificing your soul level essence and all of the unique fabrics and threads of who you are that don't seem to intersect for other people, but like in your heart of
mm,
hearts, are what makes you who you are. You can't sacrifice those, right? And so I did
mm,
that,
mm,
as a young, soon to be college student, and I've never regretted it since. It's led to so many unique, one of a kind experiences in my life, like getting a Fulbright research grant and living in Nicaragua for a year, working on a Broadway musical, so many things that truly blow my mind. I'm like, God, you really wrote a gorgeous
mm.
life story for me. But
Yep.
all of that is tethered to the fact that I'm deeply multi passionate and I don't choose. And I've even created my own title, Dream Doula, which is my hybrid
Mm.
identity, the intersection of creativity, of artistry, of life coaching, of consulting, that helps people birth unique creations into the world and honor who they uniquely are and their strengths and gifts. So that's me.
See, I'm so excited and glad that I paused and had you set the stage of who you are because that was beautiful. I think that the one thing that draws my attention immediately about what you said is that at age 17, you knew that there was for somebody to tell you to go down a certain path and go against something that felt like completely like dancing, doing the arts, something that's counter to this what higher ed or academia is supposed to be, I guess. I'm just I love the fact that you were so aware enough to be like, no, I don't want to do that, even though there's just all this essentially money on the table. You're like, no, I don't want to do that. It's not worth it to me to do that. And you still found other opportunity. to do all of the things that you really want to do, that pull to you, that call to you. Um, what before we dive into all the other stuff, because Dream Doula, I want to get to that too. But how did that, how did you make that decision? Like, what was the process then, even at 17?
I honestly, I think this is a surprising response. It surprises me, my response, but I navigated depression and anxiety like pretty severely throughout high school and middle
Mm,
school. I remember very vividly. In middle school, I was the class co-president in eighth grade, and I had I was skipping around campus and smiling, and everybody loved me. And Candy Taylor, she's the best. That we're R.I.P. Candy Taylor. We don't call myself that anymore. But
okay.
12-year-old me, we're gonna forgive her. But I on the inside, I was in so much emotional pain. There was
Mm,
like a complete juxtaposition, and I never could understand that. But I knew I didn't want to feel that forever. And I would find
mm,
these moments where I would choose whatever my intuition was telling me. And a lot of that I explored through dance actually. Like I would with movement, just in improv and say, okay, like what feels good right now? Where do I want to go? And
mm,
those like tiny actions of choosing myself and choosing my intuition brought on this feeling of comfort, of peace, of calm, of empowerment that I then just tried to replicate in my lived experiences. And so that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm going to choose me right now. I'm going to choose my version of yes and it hope it turns out with the comfort and the peace and the joy that I found in other moments of my life. And
mm,
sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it does. But I think at the bare minimum, it cultivates a sense of confidence and self trust that, that's always going to be valuable, which I greatly appreciate.
mm. I like that too. Is that like, I think that that's the missed thing. I was talking to actually was talking to my partner who's talking about her sister. My sister is like trying to make a decision about a job, and I've actually heard this a lot with some of my clients too that I coach. It's that like there was an opportunity for this job to make more money, but the job was like boring. Like it was boring, right? And she's doing a lot of cool things right now. She's exhausted, but she's doing a lot of cool things right now. Um, and the thing that she said was that like I don't want to miss out on this opportunity because I don't know if I'm ever going to get another one. And like to have, and not just her, because I've heard this from my coaching clients, from people that have been in, these training circles that I have, is that opportunity can feel like it can be finite. That like you have to deny self in many ways and not see or realize like it's just not worth denying self completely wholly to chase after something that you think might be the only way or the only path or the only opportunity that you're ever going to see. And I just like how, I don't know, like something in that story, just like you were able to identify that, like you wanted to make a change and like be different and feel better, and embrace like you. Um, and yeah, I just hope people like hear that, like that's just like really, I just can't. It's really wild to me of how many people are still like trying to navigate this and push through this and figure it out. Whether they're 20 something or 50 something. Like I still talk to people all over the spectrum of of folks who are trying to still figure it
That's
out.
the design of the system that we live in, right? Like the design
Mm,
is for you to repress what actually helps you feel good, what helps you feel joyful, what helps you feel powerful. That is the system. It beats it out of us. And so I always tell people choosing yourself, choosing your joy is a revolutionary act. Like it
mm,
is
mm,
so brave and courageous to say, no, I'm worthy and I don't have everything, into the future figured out, or I don't have the knowledge of what's coming, but I have the information of where I am now and I have the information of my past. I'm going to use that to inform whatever's next. And I'm going to love myself through it, even if that leads me to some increased hardship or disappointment. I'm going to be okay because I'm stronger than disappointment. I'm stronger than difficulty. So I always
Mm,
tell people to celebrate that and really cherish what it takes to be able to get yourself to a place where you're choosing yourself even without, knowing that you'll be quote unquote successful.
mm. And even redefining what success means,
Yeah,
right? Like I think that's something you said too just now, is that maybe that's a realization for me, is that like the path to joy isn't always easy. Like the path to joy, like self fulfillment, wholeness, isn't something that's like this straight and narrow path that you're always going to be able to go towards, right? Sometimes that thing that feels like it would bring you joy, that feels like it's successful, but that is completely misaligned with who you are, your values, that doesn't make sense for you at all, but like it makes sense, I guess, to outside forces or people outside of you, or makes sense for somebody else, but you're like, why would I give up this up? Why would I not do this? That's the shorter path, but it can be very difficult and hard and exhausting to be like, I want to do this because like it legitimately makes me happy, like I am joyful, like something soul satisfying, and with this pursuit, not only this pursuit but like getting there to make it. Okay, so let's talk about this dream doula stuff because I'm starting to wake up now. I was a little tired, but I'm waking up now. So you came up with this whole title, this like Dream Doula. Like I freaking love this. When I read that, I was like, "Ooh, let's talk about this."
it's
So you shared a little bit earlier about it.
you're connected to
Yeah,
Carissa, who
yeah.
is a fellow dream doula, and like that's how we connected because we both realized we were calling ourselves a dream doula, and I was like, what, there's somebody else with the same level of genius as me. I'm obsessed with that.
Come on, come on. Shout out Carissa. I love that. So that is amazing. Um, yeah. So tell us more about like how did you came to be like Dream Doula? Like that's how did this like you land on this? Like this is the thing that I want to guide and help people uh, with as the title.
For sure. It started off with an identity crisis.
Okay.
I was calling myself a coach. I started my business in 2016, and what's going on, 8 years? I can't even believe that. And I was, every time I used the word coach, it just felt incongruent. I was like,
Mm,
sure, but it doesn't capture what you experience when you engage with me. I'm not just drawing up plays on the sideline, even though that's part of what I do. I'm not just open asking open-ended questions for you to like explore your mind and never sharing my point of view. Like I don't subscribe to that methodology of coaching. I think you
mm,
hired me because you want my opinion and not just because you want me to hold up a mirror for you, which I think is valuable part of coaching. But I just felt like this is not capturing what I do and how I want to support the world. So
mm,
I was seeking something else while on this journey. And I went on a trip and I was talking with someone I met there, and they were describing the work of doulas, birth doulas to me. And I was like, oh, that's what I do. And the way that the short version of what they described to me is there's an introductory period with doulaing where you're just helping the person become more knowledgeable about what they're going to experience in the birthing process. And you're helping them to
mm,
prepare, you're helping them to be an advocate for themselves, clarifying what they want the experience to look like and feel like, what decisions they want to make, and holding up what that process, what they need to know and what they need to have in mind before they even engage in the experience. And then the second
mm,
level of that is actually navigating the birthing process, which is traumatic. Even if it's joyful, even if you're happy and proud, it is a trauma. And how do
mm,
you navigate that trauma with recovery in mind, with prosperity in mind on the other side of it, with wanting to have a positive, memorable experience on the other side of it, or at least as close to that as possible. And then
mm,
lastly, how do you integrate once you have this new, for birthing, a new child in the world? How do you integrate that child in your life? How do you make sure that you're able to take care of yourself and take care of your other family members and all of your responsibilities even with this new thing in the world? And I was like, oh, that's what I do when I'm working with my coaching clients. And then I started to explore death doula work, which is
Mm,
helping people to prepare for death, and whether that's like the individual themselves or the family members. And I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is it. And what I'm doing
mm,
that with is the dreams that you have, the unique creations, the unique visions that you have as a person, that advocacy, education, mentorship, guidance, and then the integration that happens along the way. So
mm.
yeah, that's where it came from. Like someone just teaching me what a doula was, and also that there are so few Black doulas. And this really spoke to
Mm.
me because I felt like in my coaching journey, I felt similar. I wanted a Black person to coach me. I wanted someone who, I don't, identity is a little tricky around Blackness because we are all unique, but the cultural implications of being a Black person are the reality, right? Like, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted someone who could understand those cultural implications and use them as context for how they were supporting me. And I found that there were so few Black coaches that I knew of, or that were, celebrated and out there in the world. And similarly with, doulas, there's very few Black people that are in this role supporting, and we need to kind of expand how many people have access to this. So I hope for many dream doulas, many Black dream doulas to come and be inspired by my story and the stories of other people, and like support other people with this work.
Yeah. Damn, that is like I really really like that, and even just the I'm slowing down my brain because I realized like my brain was moving really
Mhm.
fast and like the words aren't coming the way I want them to. So I'm practicing stillness in real
I
time.
love it.
So bear with me. I really do appreciate the approach to supporting people and birthing their dreams because I think yeah, you're so right. The methodology of coaching um it really feels very similar to like the like methodologies of like therapy and all those different things. It's really just like talking at you. It's not really centered in any kind of. It doesn't center anybody outside of like a white context like that. Those are the folks that like contextualize it and did all those things, but it doesn't take into account a lot of times, at least the academic way or the way that folks are trained to consider like the cultural implications of like how cultural implications, the cultural identities, the backgrounds, um, the perspectives of anybody outside of like whiteness or white maleness, and so white cis het maleness, whatever. But I appreciate the approach to like supporting in the birthing of somebody's dream because it is a process. Like you're really working out the deep intricacies of something so vulnerable and so personal as a dream. Um, I've talked about on the pod before and on other conversations about how like even being a business owner, like how personal, like how much and big this it's a dream of mine to do this. Like nobody in my family has been an entrepreneur in this way, and I've been doing it for full time for 4 years, and like I just cannot believe how I've changed, but like how personal it is, like this thing that's so close to me. And so to yeah, to hear you talk about like in this way of like walking so closely and not necessarily mentoring, but really collaborating and being with somebody throughout their process. Because I think people underestimate that aspect of like a dream is only a dream and it'll just live in my mind and I can't do it. And that's not necessarily true. Um, yeah, like I just really really appreciate uh, that approach. So thanks for the work you do because I really do appreciate it because I'm a coach, but like you're so right. I don't know if it really fully I'm not a dream doula. I'm not that much. I don't know, but I feel like I feel like it doesn't really fully encompass all the work that I do and support for my clients too.
Yeah.
So
I
uh,
wanted to share, there's a woman named Dr. Sarah Beth Burke, and
mm,
um, she has done a lot of research around professional titles, and particularly for multi-passionate people, creating professional titles that are congruent with who we are and the actual work that we're doing. So I would definitely invite you and anybody else who's like, this term like works, but is not the fullness of who I am, to explore some of
Mm-hmm.
her work. She has lots of guiding prompts that, for me, it actually just affirmed that Dream Doula was the right title, and
Yeah.
gave me the understanding of what the intersections were that kind of like comprise all the work together, which was
Mm,
super helpful. Like now I can articulate what a dream doula does and not just
mm.
have the title that feels fancy and cool and, more resonant.
That's hilarious. Yeah, because that's so true. Sometimes people be saying titles and you're like, what does that mean though? You know. That's it. Red signal to that because I want to do that and share that with folks. So what do you as your work as a dream doula? What has been some of the most common like dream blocks that you've seen among the folks that you work with?
That is
Slash, who do you often work with?
Yeah, I mostly work with multi-passionate people, and I think the
Mm,
biggest dream block that comes up for people like us is, the competing priorities, competing visions,
mm.
right? Like, you're pregnant with multiples, and you're like,
Yes.
"I gotta I gotta take care of all these damn kids. I don't know how to do it," right? Um,
Yeah.
you're like, "I can't even afford myself, let alone all
Yes.
the dreams that I got."
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you we're not gonna kill off one of the babies, which is
Yeah.
what the world tells you to do, and you're like, if someone ever held that up for you, you're like, "I'm pregnant with 3 children." If someone ever was like, "Why don't you just kill one so it's less work?" That would be
Mm,
wild, but that's what
yeah.
the world asks us to do, and I don't think that they understand, for a multi-passionate person, that that's what it feels like.
Mm,
You're asking me to take one of my triplets and be like, "I don't care about you," before I even meet
yeah.
it, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
like a wild thing to ask someone to do. So, a lot of what my support for those types of folks is saying, "No, like, here's how we hold all 3 of them and get intimate with all 3 of them, understand what they each need from you, because it's not the same thing, right? Like, why don't we start with the easiest dream to, get up and running, so that then the one that needs a little bit more support, a little bit more nourishment, you have space to focus on that because you got this one running and doing its thing already. But
Mm,
staying connected to all 3 so that you're feeling like you're honoring all that you are and not abandoning part of your vision and part of what's living within you, but also being realistic about, w time being, a natural resource that you have to be cognizant of how you're utilizing. So that's one of the biggest roadblocks. And I think another one is, I work with a lot of empathetic and like heart-centered visionaries. So, therapists, coaches, and I think that like bleeding heart energy, or Captain Save-A-Ho, is what I usually
yeah. Yeah.
but I use it, and it is what it is. Um,
No, that's the kind of pod we are. You go ahead.
like, it is what it is.
No, for real. Yeah.
Um, I find that a lot of my people have to reorient that, right? And like
Mm,
helping people to actually prioritize themselves and seeing that not as selfish, but selfless, and
mm,
getting to a place where you are so full that everyone receives from you, but it's from a place of overflow rather than depletion. So rather than
mm,
say taking your energetic reserves and pouring that into everyone and then having to constantly fuel yourself back up and like, recover from burnout every couple of months, how about we get you to a place where your baseline is overflow,
mm.
and you're constantly giving because that's a desire of yours, but you don't ever feel empty when you're giving. And it takes a lot of work to get there. Recovering people pleaser, like, I know, but that is definitely something I try to support my clients to like move through and reorient themselves with.
Yeah. So can we start with the first block? Because I'm curious, as somebody who has multiple passions, like I'll go. I also neurospicy brain.
Hmm?
I ADD. So I love like all different projects and different things like that. And there's like 15 different things that I still want to do. Like I want to be like an incredible chef. Like at one point, but also got this podcast, but also want to write a book next year, all kinds of things, right? Um, how do you help folks like figure out, besides like the how much time you can give to it, how do you help folks, for lack of a better word, prioritize
Yeah.
that thing that they want to do first, or organize those things, or if even if it is that, I'm curious, how do you help folks choose that project that they take up first
I think there are
instead of.
two, like the very practical advice that I would give to folks is get them out of your brain, right? Typically, what we
Mm,
do is we have our dreams occupying our mental space constantly, and then we shame ourselves because we forget, because your brain can only focus on so much at one time, right? And so
mm,
if you think about it like an artist, set your life up like an art studio. Get the palette with the painting over here, and then have your ceramics wheel over here, and then have your sketch pad over here. Like, have them all out in the space. And a practical way to do that is like get a spreadsheet, have a tab for each of your visions, right? Like I have
mm.
my amateur chef journey, which we're aligned on that too. Like I
Yeah.
cannot wait to go on Food Network and become an amateur chef on, mentored by
Yeah.
Play. Like I'm ready. I got the whole vision for it, right?
Yeah.
Have a tab for that. Have a tab for your podcast. Have a tab for the small business that you want to, e-commerce business, and just write down all of the layers of that vision, right? So that you can return to that on a cyclical basis and say, okay, which of the layers of this vision do I want to be working on right now? If you can't
Mm,
see it, it's really hard for you to even remember to pour into and nurture that vision. Um, so
mm,
that's one thing. And then I have a very consistent practice of just tapping back into three core things: my core needs, my core values, and my core desires. And those are
mm,
going to shift throughout your life based on where you are, based on your experiences. But regularly checking in with them gives you then the compass to navigate your creative visions, right? If
mm,
my core need at the moment is for financial security, and my core value is for connection and community, and my core desire is for effervescence, which was my core value for or core desire for this year, that's going to determine which one of those journeys I go on, right? Like maybe I'm not going to do the cooking journey because for me, that's pretty um, independent. Like I don't really love to cook with other people. I'm like, get out of my kitchen. Like I want to be here
yeah.
for myself. So that's not the one I'm
Yeah.
gonna tap into for financial security, effervescence, and connection, because it doesn't bring me
Mm,
those things, right? I'm gonna shift and maybe I'll focus on my business because I have my Daily Cup of Joy membership where we're dancing in community every day. And it's
mm,
also bringing me monetary, injections every day when a new member signs up, and it builds in that connection as well, right? So that one
yeah.
feels really clearly aligned to these three core things in my life, and it allows you to prioritize based on yourself, because I think a lot of time we end up prioritizing based on what other people project onto us, what we should value and what we should desire and what we think we should need.
Mm. I like that too, and really kind of finding that alignment with those different. I don't know. It's kind of like a not a decision tree. I don't know what the word is, but like you have like this filter system that you can just like ask those questions, like values. Is it does it align with your passions, or your needs, your wants, and everything
It's
like
the
that.
nerd in
I
me.
love
The
that.
nerd in me loves a rubric. I'm
Yes, rubric. I love a rubric.
rubric. I can map myself out and evaluate, like, am I in alignment with what I say I care about and what I say I want for
Yes.
my life.
Yes, yes, and some people might think that, I don't know. I used to rail against like my. I used to feel bad a little bit for like, why do I need a rubric to understand, or like why do I need to write this out, or why do I need to do this? Like if I believe it and if it's in me, why do I need a plan? Let's just do it. But like honestly, having a plan, writing it out, like really like intentionally thinking about it helps so much in even the creative process. Even like maybe as you're planning it, not necessarily planning out, but like talking about it, brainstorming, dreaming out loud about this, and writing it out. Maybe you discover like, oh, actually, I don't really. The idea of it was better than the actual implementation or the desire, the true actual desire of me wanting to do that. And so there's so much that can happen in that planning journey that I figured out now that I'm like, actually, the planning is so necessary. My executive function personally is a little tough sometimes, but I oftentimes like really encourage my clients to kind of, let's like talk about it. Let's like think about it. Is this something you actually want to do? That's really good. I love a good rubric. Really, really love a good rubric.
Amazing. I also was thinking
Yeah.
too, as we're bringing up authenticity as kind of the theme. What does
Mm,
authenticity mean to me? And that's presence, right? And like,
mm,
if you are truly present, you understand that where you are right now, what you're experiencing right now is fleeting. This moment will never happen again. And you are going to evolve over time. So if I'm truly being authentic, truly being present, I have to have a system that allows me to reevaluate when I evolve, reevaluate when
mm,
I transform, reevaluate when presence looks entirely different moments from now. And
mm.
and that's why I like rubrics as evaluative tools and not, like the ABCD system, because like that doesn't inform me. That doesn't like give me a tool to empower myself. That just says like based on these obsolete or like random systems, I am approving or disproving myself. Like that doesn't mean anything. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I really like. I don't think that we should bind ourselves to the identity that we had even yesterday, even a few
Yeah.
hours ago. Like if you are learning, and my people are voracious learners, we love to explore and discover things. That changes you.
Mm.
Why on earth wouldn't you let your life evolve based on being changed by like a learning experience? So that's always important for me. It's especially in the name of authenticity.
Yeah. And I was gonna ask you about that, but that something draws me to the concept of time when you talk about that and evolution and change. Because I think even for myself, I feel like when I have an idea, I need to do it right now or it's never going to be done. Or if I have a passion like this, I've had a book idea for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And I feel like every year that I don't write the book or start something or plan for it, that it's never going to happen. And I get further and further from that dream. But that actually, it's not true. And I think when we think about time, we are taught that time is linear, right? That like it's just going to continue to move forward. But like time is just like a concept, honestly. Like we live in a hyper productive, like fast-paced environment where you're working all the time, where like you graduate. My own experience, and maybe this is where it came from, is like I graduated Friday, I started a job on Monday.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is literally how I started like my true adult years, post schooling, and there was never really any space because I jam packed my schedule and all the things I was doing in college to like really just figure it out. Especially after I decided not to go to law school, like that was a really rough 2 years after I graduated college, of like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I think about this idea of time, and that's one thing that I've learned since being a business owner, but also the thing that I work with my clients on is like, why do you think that this needs to happen like right now?
Hmm.
You know, like why do you think that this thing that you're planning about and you've thought about, and maybe even thought about this as when you were a little kid, like you're 30, you're 31. Do you know how young that is? Like you still, I said, like you know how much time that you have? Like what are the obstacles that are actually in your way? And are those like realistic to get through, to get past, to work around? Like then dope. Like time isn't, you have so much time, and even if you're older you have so much time. Like there's so many things that you can figure out and do. I think folks get caught up, and no, we get caught up. I'm gonna put myself in there. I'm not gonna try to distance myself from that. uh I just get so caught up in that it has to happen right now. But like there is really something that can be said about the planning, the process of like figuring it out and like actually getting it out of your brain and seeing like how can you make this work. And when I asked somebody about writing a book, that was one of the first things he said. It's like just map it out, plan it out, and see like realistically how long it's going to take you. What do you want to write about? Different things like that. I don't know, that's what came to mind as you were talking, just like this idea of time, too, somewhere in that.
There
Um,
are two things
yeah.
that I'd love to respond to there. I think the first is that you're already writing the book.
Mm,
I think that society conditions us to think if you haven't documented it down in your Google Docs or with your pen and paper that it's not the writing process. But I'm imagining that your book has a lot to do with your identity and your lived experiences. That's just like what's intuitively coming to me. So in
mm,
living, you're writing the book.
mm,
And there will be a phase of the book writing process where you actually put pen to paper or you actually put fingers clack, clack, clacking on the keyboard,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
get
yeah.
there. And I think too, if you have it, just if you're holding space for it and you're cyclically reconnecting and engaging with all of your visions, right? Like I literally have a document that has all of the things that I want to create. I want to build a wellness adventure park, and I'm seeing your Boston Celtics thing. I want to go back to Boston and build the very first wellness adventure park. That is a massive
Mm,
feat. I'm not going to snap my fingers and do that overnight,
mm-hmm.
but I do revisit and have dates with that vision consistently. And so
Mm,
the I'm not like neglecting it or pushing it off and, the way that time would make us think. I'm just writing the part of that story in a different way right now. So that's the
mm.
first thing. You're writing your book.
Yeah, love the reframe there.
And the second thing too is that I think this connects me back to why like representation feels so important in this type of work and in like the dream doula and the coaching space is because if you look at Afro-futurist tenets, right, that is like steeped in Black culture, it actually rejects the linear concept of time. It says
Mm,
that both past, present, and future is now.
mm,
Everything comes and goes, right? Like when we have that framing of time, you don't feel pressure
mm-hmm.
because the future is happening right now and the past is
Yeah,
also happening right now. And you can just live in the present moment and do whatever is before you. You don't you But again, when you're indoctrinated in contexts that are not your culture, that are not your essence, that are not your nature, it can be
yeah.
real. You can press yourself into misalignment, which is what we
Mm,
often like a lot of our lived experience is forcing ourselves into misalignment for the sake of achieving some level of success that we don't even care about.
yeah,
I have so
yeah.
many awards. I'm like, I don't throw that trophy in the trash.
Yeah.
Put it in the back of the closet, throw it in the trash because I don't care.
Yeah.
It wasn't success that was like aligned with who I am.
Yeah. That's so true. I think I just want to make sure like folks catch that because like that is really like freeing as far as like the concept of time to know that the past and the present and the future are all happening all at once. And so to even plan for something that you don't know can even happen or occur, it's actually not overwhelming or even like a nihilistic perspective to say like, oh, then what's the point? It actually is freeing enough to be like, you can actually you don't have to fit yourself into a mold that doesn't like actually align with you. You actually can choose to be you. You can choose to figure out and explore who you are
Right.
and like go through that process without the pressure of having to conform. Which I think again to your point, it's like we live in a society that like so puts so much pressure on us to figure it out and know. Like one of the most annoying questions that I had to stop asking and I did not like hearing people ask is like asking because my the beginning of my background is in higher education, and so working with these kids and asking them like students, they're not kids, asking them like, yo, like, so what are you gonna do, or what's your major going to be, like, what do you want to be when you go, like, I don't know, man, like I'm 18, I'm 22, like I really actually don't know. When did you have your life figured out? You know what I'm saying? um and oftentimes that led me to asking people how did you get to where you are, and a lot of times they would say I just kept going and then I just found this and I loved it. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's actually, so the journey is actually more important um than all that other stuff that we were told growing up. That makes more sense. It doesn't mean that the planning process isn't worth it, I would say, but
but you don't have to grip a plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like the plan
Yeah.
is not, don't make a prison out of your plan.
There it is. There it is. There it is. Yeah.
Create infrastructure that supports you, but
Mm.
then don't grip that infrastructure. Like let it, I think about rivers. I love studying water. I love using nature in general as like way to just process life and how we experience life. But like the river doesn't say, here's the edge of the riverbed. I have to stay within this. If the
Mm.
river's stronger, it's going up over the sides.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
create a new pathway for itself. It's going to expand, and it's not going to conform its essence, its power, because these are the predefined structures, right?
Mm.
Like that's what we have to embrace more. Yes, you're creating a plan for yourself, but the plan is just to help you start your pathway, get in motion,
Mm.
create momentum, and then you might, and which is the case of most visionaries, you're probably going to exceed the expectations of your plan.
Mm.
That's like the I always expect to exceed expectations, not because I'm putting pressure on myself, but because I'm a visionary, because I'm creative, because I understand that it is a divine mandate to create. And
Yeah.
when you open that faucet, the water comes rushing through.
Mm.
So I have the expectation that I'm going to say, okay, the plan that I started only was to get me started, only
Mm.
to get the ignition going, and then from there, when I get off and running, I got to be ready to iterate and innovate
Mm.
that original plan.
The question that comes to mind then is for somebody who, okay, so authenticity is like a value of mine, or kind of. But anyways, so for somebody who is trying to step into themselves, but also like we talked earlier about planning and doing all these things. How do you hold those two things, right? As you're changing, as you're trying to be in the moment and be you in those moments, but you've spent all this time planning. How do you kind of allow yourself to iterate?
Yep.
Because I imagine for me as somebody who sometimes can spend a ton of time in the planning stage, for fear of failure, for fear of this not landing, for fear of like the communication part not landing with folks or whatever. How does somebody just like do that and allow the change to happen as they're trying to be themselves with their dream or whatever they're doing?
Such a good question. It's making me think. I have a signature framework that I use with my clients and with myself. It's called the Triple S framework, and it has 3 steps. And I literally live in this cycle forever.
Mm.
The planning process and the strategic portion of this is actually the middle. And I think a lot of people get that wrong. They start with the planning before they do the first step in the process, which is self exploration and self intimacy work.
Mm.
The
Mm.
purpose of your plan is to reinforce a hypothesis about yourself, right? And so
Mm.
in the self intimacy or self exploration work, and I use the metaphor looking at the back of your hand. You look at the back of your hand yourself, and you discover some intricacy, some unique trait, right? Like I have a little wrinkle. Oh, I have a scar on my pinky. What is that? What about that scar on my pinky is interesting or dynamic, or do I want to explore more, right? And that might be, I use a lot of intuitive tools in that process. So that might be, my moon is Pisces and in astrology, and that typically means that people are kind of psychic in nature or deeply intuitive, are emotional, and have like vast capacity for emotional expression. Okay, harness that about myself, and then I plan with that, right? Like,
Mm.
how do I want to utilize that? When I first discovered that, I was like, okay, cool. I want to infuse intuitive modalities into my coaching business. I'm now using tarot readings as a method to have conversations and strike up reflection for my clients.
Mm.
And then so that first layer of self intimacy, second layer strategic planning and action taking, and then third is self celebration and affirmation. A lot of people are just skipping this, right? Like
Mm.
you can't step into something, you can't make it a habit, you can't make it a ritual, you can't make it a lifestyle if you don't have any reinforcement of it, if you don't have any reason to double down, right? Like
Mm.
we tend to turn away from the things that don't affirm us, that don't get us recognition. We are incentivized and motivated by recognition. So if you're not doing it for yourself, you're probably going to jump toward the affirmation and recognition and motivation from somebody else. So I say, like, you do that
Mm.
yourself. So in this example, I discovered I wanted to explore more of my intuitiveness and my psychic abilities within the strategy of how I coach my clients and how I support my clients. And then I had to affirm that when my client was like, "Oh my gosh, how did you know that? Like, we could have spent 4 hours, I've spent, hours and hours and hours talking to X, Y, and Z person about this layer of who I am. And in
Mm.
one tarot card reading, you discovered that right away." I
Mm.
have to then celebrate that for myself. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to affirm, this is now evidence that what I said is true about myself is true.
Mm.
And I just keep
Mm.
iterating on that over and over again, right? So, like, the purpose of the plan is to affirm identity. And then you have to be a
Mm.
part of that affirmation. You have to kind of close the loop there. You say, "Okay, this is what I wanted to prove is true about myself. I'm a writer. Great, my plan is to write a book.
Mm.
I start my writing a book by writing one sentence every day. When I show up and write the sentence every day, I affirm that. I'm so proud
Mm.
of you for writing that sentence, because you know that once you have 365 sentences, you have a chapter of your book." That
Mm.
makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a realization, like, I don't know what happened, but like my brain went into the binary way of thinking, right? Of like, I need the plan or I don't have the plan. Um, and I just, as we are chatting and like you breaking it down this way, like I realized, like, yeah, like the plan is just, that's just a great way to put it. The plan is to reaffirm the direction that you're heading, right? And like it's the foundation. It's not like this like thing that we have to hold on to super tight. Um, uh, like the imagery that I'm getting, or the, I don't know what to call it, but like it's almost as if the plan that I write is my map, and if I lose it, I won't know where to go. And I think that that is terrifying to me, because
Mm,
I think the space that I'm in, and hopefully this speaks to somebody, the space that I'm in, it's like I can't afford to get lost right now.
mm,
Um, I can't afford to like have have this time where I'm just trying to figure it out because I don't know. But I think that is again into this the way that society has like coaxed us and like boxed us in, that like
yep,
you need to like have it, you have to have a plan, you have to have it figured out. Like people need to understand and need to know like what you're talking about. You need to like have a finite way to be able to communicate in like this 30-second elevator pitch, and like all these things go in my head. But
You're
if you
describing,
if
by the way, you're describing white supremacy. I'm just
yes, I am.
like,
Yes. Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
the plan, that's white
Yeah.
supremacy. But okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like if we say that, if what we're talking about today, if we accept that, if we begin to embody that, and we say that, if we let go of holding the plan, our map so tightly, and be like, actually I'm not lost.
Mhm.
Like I'm exploring. I'm on an adventure. I'm on a journey. And I know that there's a clear destination. I just know that like it's north. I'm going north. I'm going west or whatever. Like if I can continue to do that and be okay with that, that's all right. Because like the wilderness, uh the absence of direction doesn't mean that you're necessarily lost. Um it's just that we've been told that like that not having a quote unquote direction is like there's like a negative connotation to that.
Mhm.
But if you're just exploring, and shout out my friend Isaiah, he said this, like it's okay to be in that place, like because in that place of grayness, like like wilderness or whatever, um, you there's like discovery, there's adventure, like there's a freeness that we have, um, yeah.
If
And that just hit me that I didn't realize like I was just being like I'm just like in a season of life right now, particularly in these last few months, where it just feels like I am in fight or flight mode.
Yep.
Um, and fear is guiding a lot of my decisions
Mm.
rather than the trust that everything's going to work out, that I will figure it out. It's just hard right now.
I so appreciate that honesty because I think a lot of people are navigating that fear, right? And I speak about this a lot. Like, this is another roadblock of my clients, because they're inquisitive and because they value knowledge and eldership and like the wisdom that exists in the world already. They gravitate to only building with that material, right? So you get exposed to
Mm,
different materials that you've learned about, and then you only build with those materials, forgetting that you have innate gifts and you have innate skills, that if you reject those in favor of what you're learning about, you're missing out on some of the power that's available to you, right? Like, I
mm,
think what's really interesting, particularly with your metaphor of the map, like maps change all the time,
mm,
right? Like, if you think about a, a map of ancient Babylon, if you look at that same landmass now, how it's delineated, what's what, all the names of places, that's totally different now. And that's what happens when we
mm,
create our initial plan. We have a roadmap based on what the information that we have, and then you have to go and navigate it and understand, oh no, there's already people living here and this is what they call it. That's what they should have done. That's what
mm.
Christopher Columbus
Yeah.
should have done. Right?
Yeah.
Like, don't be Christopher Columbus in your own life.
Mm,
Don't
mm,
get to a space and interact and engage with it and override what you're actually living. Yes,
mm.
you came in with the what you thought was the predetermined name of this chapter of your life. But now that you're here, you have to adapt to what you see. And like, hopefully, you adapting to what you see is not colonizing your own dream,
Yeah.
and like bringing in the infrastructure of a world that you don't like. Don't build
Yeah.
your, I always say this, don't build your dream life with materials you hate.
Yeah. After.
Free
Ufta.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Free yourself.
Yeah. 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 Huh. 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 That's good. I'll have a lot to think about after this conversation. Um I don't know where to go. That's okay.
Yeah.
The so I think what I do I'm trying to avoid in this series is say authenticity way too many times.
Sure.
But but I think I'm curious about, and I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but I think that there's something about in the creative process, because we talked and tapped in on like creativity and different things like that throughout our time that we've talked.
Hmm.
I'm curious as far as like creatives, multi passionate folks who are at times feel like they're feeling like scattered.
Hmm. Yeah. I
And
think,
adding like this idea of planning too. I'm curious, like how do they continue to move forward? Like, what would be like practical steps? Like, if somebody was in that place, like, how do they? What's like the first thing that you would recommend that they do?
well, I would say get acquainted to what creativity actually is. I think
Mm,
that I don't really know the why behind this, but creativity has been like pinned down to artistic expression.
hmm,
And that is part of what creativity is, but it's not the only mode of creativity. Like, creativity is
hmm,
rooted in the act of creation, which is the process of bringing something into existence.
hmm,
Right? And like, then from there, creative principles that I value within that are like impermanence, are innovation, adaptation, letting things evolve, like letting that breathe into the work that you're making. And I'm really grateful that I had artistry as a part of my journey, because when I think of choreography, for example, the expectation is that you take time to make that thing.
hmm,
The expectation of choreography is not that you're going to, in 1 hour, finish the product.
Mm.
The expectation is that maybe you have a session where you do that and you let movement come out of you, but then you start to say, okay, well, what's the statement I'm trying to make? What do I want people to feel from this? What do I want to feel while I'm doing it? And you
Mm.
adapt and you mold and you adjust. And what do I want this to say about relationships? How do I bring other forces within this? What music do I need to help me express what I'm trying to communicate? Um, so I would say, all that to say, get clear on what it is you want to exist, right? That's step
Mm.
number one. What do you want more of in the world? Or what do you want in the world that doesn't exist now that you need to exist? That should be the
Mm.
first question. And going back to what you were talking about with your students, I wish we were asking students that instead of what do you want to be when you grow up? What do
Yeah.
you want to exist in the world? What do you want more of in the world? Kids will tell you play, and we need some more damn play
Yeah,
in
for
the
real.
world, right? Like our efforts and what we seek and pursue would be dramatically different if we started with that question.
Mm-hmm.
And then give yourself like a time frame for creation. And
Mm.
don't think that what I have to have at the end of my creative process has to be done. Like you should go in with the expectation of impermanence, with the expectation of evolution and more creativity, more unexpectedness, like surprise yourself throughout that process. But I really think
Mm.
impermanence, that's the coolest thing about dance work. Like even a recording of it is not what you witnessed and you felt when you were in the room with a performance.
Mm.
That's not what was created there. That's not the
Mm.
creation. The recording is capturing some of the details, fragments of the details of what you created, but you still have that expectation that's inherent that this is impermanent. And so those are the only two things you need.
Mm.
What do you want more of? What do you want to exist in the world? And then a time to let yourself experiment and create and
Mm.
trust that it should be impermanent, right? Like whatever iteration of your business that you have right now, the first layer of that is what do I want more of in the world as a result of this modality? And then
Mm.
I'm giving myself 6 months to try all the strategies for making more of that. My focus right now is joy. I want more joy in the world because I think there's a lot of darkness and sadness and pain.
Mm.
And do I think that's going to go away? No, but I do think that what I want, the other layers of what I want in the world, equity, compassion, love, like joy is a vehicle for that. So every thread, every choreographic stroke that I'm doing within my business is woven with the idea that I'm creating more joy.
Mm. I love that. And it takes me back to the imagery that you had before of like an art studio of like having these different projects like outlined that you started.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean that you're not going to visit them again. It's just like having a space and a dedicated time, those like dream dates that you had. I love that idea. Have a date with your dream and like mess around with it, fool around with it, play with it, do some research for it, write, draw, cook, read, whatever you're gonna do with that, and spend time doing that, and just like keep moving it along.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes that may see the world, and sometimes it might not, but the might not of it like existing out in the world actually isn't a bad thing, because like you're doing that thing for you,
Yeah.
which again is a that's an anti-capitalist way of doing things. It's like just creating for the sake of creating and creating that more play and joy for you. um yeah, this is a really good reminder today. Thanks so much, Candice.
Thank you.
um yeah, I've kept you long enough, but I would love for you to be able to share where folks can find you, what cool things you're creating and putting out in the world that I can share with folks. Please, all the things.
Uh, well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for holding space for honest conversations like this. I cherish them. I like this is what I want more of in the world. And so thank you for using your time, using your creative resources to build community that allows us to like just open up our hearts and be honest and be brave. So thank you, thank you, thank
Mm,
you. And thank you for
thank
everyone that's
you.
tuned in and listened to this whole like conversation. You could have been doing a million more things with your time, and we like really appreciate you staying plugged in with us. I always love to honor that commitment, that time you've carved out. And I have a really beautiful ritual that's called the soul care breakthrough session, and it's for folks that are just like, here's where I am, here are the challenges or the pressures that are really hindering me from living this chapter of my life the way that I want to live. Right, I was thinking about, I forget how you framed it, Jonathan, but I think you said I can't afford for life to not be experienced a certain way. I can't, I'm like
Yeah.
forgetting the word, but I think that's like one of those statements that tells me there's a soul, like there's a soul care thing that we got to break through,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, or we get to break through because you don't have to do anything. Like it's an
Yeah.
opportunity, right? Um, and so I have these sessions. I only offer them to communities that I'm close with. They're really quick. They're 30 minutes for us to explore what can help you break through the symptoms of incongruency, the symptoms of oppression, repression, that are inhibiting you from living in alignment with your soul. And I think sometimes when we hear that, we like, I don't know, we like demonize ourselves. We think we're like totally off path, but like incongruency can happen like that. And
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
that deep. The quicker that we can, like you wouldn't let yourself just like sniffle for a year. Sniffle is not like an intense symptom, but you wouldn't let that go on for a year. It would be strange. And the same thing, I think we hear ourselves express incongruencies and we just let them go on and on and on and on and on for
Hmm.
however amount of time. So this is a beautiful session for you to be able to like just drop kick that and say, no, I'm actually going to
Yeah.
address this symptom because I want to be in more in alignment with my soul, and I want to live a more empowered, joyful expression of this chapter of my life. So those are $47. I'm going to share that link with you all.
Mm,
That's exclusive to listeners of this podcast or other communities that I
nice.
feel really connected to. And then I have an app that's called the Joy Hub. You can search for it on Apple App Store and on the Android App Store. And I share every single day joy prompts to kind of like boost your sense of pleasure and delight and power, because I think it's so important right now. We know what's coming. We know a little bit of
Mm,
what's coming.
yes.
And I think that I want to fuel my people up, my creatives, my visionaries, my soul centered entrepreneurs. I want to empower you with more joy as we navigate this next chapter. So download Joy Hub. It's free 99, and it's a great way to
Yeah.
stay connected.
Amazing. I love that. I'm gonna make sure to plug all those things. And Candice would love to talk a little bit more about like concept of joy and everything like that, because I have a 5-step framework that I've created around career joy, and how to like process that. I didn't bring it up in here because I was
There was another
thinking
episode
very
I was
deeply.
listening
Yeah.
to recently that has a little bit of the career joy. I was like, yes, yes, you better
Yeah.
trademark that.
Yeah.
You said you
I
were
need to
gonna
get
like
on it.
submit the
Yeah.
application.
Yeah. I need to get on that, but yeah, absolutely. We'll connect about that online, offline. But thank you so much for coming through, y'all. This was so much jam packed with all kinds of stuff. Candace was dropping gems, y'all. So I'll make sure to plug all those wonderful things. Thanks again, Candace. This was a wonderful conversation. All right, till next time, y'all. Peace.